Hey guys, how's it going? It's Jay from Sony Alpha Lab, and in this video I'm going to cover the Sony ZV-1. Now, the ZV-1 is an ultra-compact, vlogging-oriented camera. It's extremely lightweight. It weighs about 10.5 ounces or so, about 300 grams, so it's very easy to handhold in front of you while, talking in front of the camera. What I used was this grip that I recently reviewed. It's not exactly cheap. It goes for about $130, $140. So this is pretty much how I use the camera. And you can easily just hit this little button on the top of the grip and swivel the camera around. And now it's basically in selfie mode. So the ZV-1 is basically purpose-built by Sony for vlogging. And it's also made for users that are new to video and photography in particular, because it has built-in features like product showcase, background defocus. The sun's right in my face. Here's what background defocus on, so you guys can see the fence in the background. Now I'm going to turn it off. Right now I have the background set to clear, so everything in the background should be much sharper. Skin smoothing, things like that just make it so you don't really have to know too much about photo and video when it comes to, background defocus, for example. Like, that's controlled by aperture, but you don't necessarily need to know that in order to get really good results off this camera. So Sony really focused it towards beginner-oriented users, in my opinion. They also kept the price point fairly reasonable. It goes for about $750, but it packs a lot of power, just like the more expensive and higher quality RX100 series cameras. Now, this particular camera, the camera body itself is more plastic, so it's a little bit cheaper in that regard. It doesn't have a pop-up viewfinder like the RX100 series cameras, but it does offer a really high quality directional mic on the top, which is perfect for vlogging. It's got that nice large video record button, and again, the background defocus feature is right there. It's already programmed to custom 1. It has a nice little grip on the front here to help hold it a little easier. And it's got the 3-inch articulating screen, and you can actually rotate this screen around. You can aim it low, you can aim it high, you can also aim it like this and close the camera and have it in an armored mode. So when you put it in your pocket, obviously it's going to be impossible to scratch the screen in that mode. And it also comes with this microphone diffuser. They call it a dead cat, and it slides right into the hot shoe, and it'll basically cover up the mic, which will help drastically with wind noise and things like that. So you don't want that shearing wind noise, and this will help with that. It comes with it, it's included. So like I said, this thing is just optimized for vlogging purposes right out of the box. Now, the screen is also a touch screen, and the camera has super fast autofocus, just like the new Sony RX100 series cameras. We're talking real-time AF and tracking abilities, which is phenomenal. It can also shoot 24 frames per second, which is amazing for capturing sports and things like that. And it has more advanced features for video users, such as picture profiles, S-Log2, S-Log3, HLG for, high dynamic range, or HDR video. And those are for more advanced users. You can then process the footage in post-processing and have a lot more dynamic range to your footage. It also has an HDMI port, so you can output clean HDMI at 422 sampling to an external recorder like the Atmos Ninja, for example. That's definitely more for more advanced users, but that just goes to show you how much power this camera actually packs in this small little camera body. Now, it also has the fast 24-70 f1.8 to f2.8 lens and a built-in ND filter. That built-in ND filter is awesome for maintaining shutter speeds in brighter conditions, so you can have the camera at maximum aperture while in bright conditions. And the only way to do that is to basically put tinted glass in front of the lens, like what I'm using right here, because I'm at f1.4 on the Sigma 30mm lens that I'm recording with right now. And it's a lot harder to do that on a camera like this. You have to get one of those magnet type filters to go on the front of the lens, which isn't really ideal. So the built-in ND filter helps dramatically, and it'll also allow you to get slower shutter speeds for motion blur effects for photography. So the ZV-1 is also capable of recording 4K video, of course, at 24p, and it can do that for an unlimited period of time as long as the camera doesn't overheat or you don't run out of battery life. There is an option in the camera, which I'll show you in a minute, to set the auto turn off temperature to high, and that will allow you to record unlimited, as long, like I said, as long as the camera doesn't overheat. I did not have any overheating issues with it, but I was basically working in about 75 to 80 degree temperatures Fahrenheit. So if you're in hotter temperatures than that, you may have issues with the camera overheating. It also records in 1080 at 120p, 60p, 30p, 24p. And in addition to that, it has high frame rate mode recording, which is just unbelievably awesome slow motion you can get with this thing. And it, you know, similar to the other RX 100 series cameras. It also features scene modes, intelligent auto modes, sweep panorama mode for very cool panoramic effects. It just has a lot of power and a lot of features. And it was a lot of fun to use. I went hiking with the kids. Cool leaf, Layla. It's right here, right in front of me, there's a spider web. I did a little riding on my skateboard with it. All right, so let's get into the lab here, and I'm gonna boot the camera up and I'll show you how to use some of the basic features of the camera, and I'll also go over some of the key features that you need to change immediately inside the camera menu system. There are a couple of features that, in my opinion, are set wrong out of the box, and I'm gonna show you that so you can get the best possible quality video and photos. All right, guys, so I just wanted to give you a closer look at the Sony ZV-1 in my hands here. So as you can see from the top side, you have this really high quality directional 3-capsule microphone. So it is aiming towards the front, so it's pretty much optimized for talking in front of the camera, which is what this camera is made for, vlogging in particular. All right, well, we're definitely making some progress on our hike. It looks like we got about 1.5 miles left, and so far this Sony ZV-1 seems to be working pretty darn good. I don't know how the audio sounds. We'll find out when I get back home. Let me know in the comments below. So also what you have here, you have the shutter button. You have the zoom toggle that'll zoom the lens in and out from 24 to 70 millimeter. You have the on-off button here. You have the mode button here as opposed to a mode dial that you may recall from a lot of the RX 100 series cameras. They all have mode dials. This one has a mode button, which will actually bring up a simulated mode dial on the screen when you have the camera on. I'll show you that in a minute. Now you also have a record button here, a nice large record button. You have a grip on the front of the camera here, so it's much easier to hold than without the grip when it's smooth there, like on the RX 100 series. I like how they incorporated that. There is no built-in flash, which is why they were able to put such a large mic in there, but it does have the hot shoe here, which you can slide off, like slow, the little hot shoe cover, and then you can put in aftermarket microphones, video lights, all sorts of stuff like that if you want. Or if you're somebody like me that would just want to run and gun with a camera like this, you can slide in the provided mic diffuser, which is also called a dead cat, which is kind of odd, I know, but that's what they call these things. And it'll basically muffle the mic so wind noise is much less pronounced. Now, looking at it from the front of the camera, you have here a tally light, they call it, which is basically a video light. So when you hit the record button, that light lights up to let you know that the camera's recording. See that? So you can actually turn that off in the menu system if you don't want people to know, but it is nice to know when you're standing in front of the camera that you're recording. So I just wanted to show you that quick. And they call that the tally light. And then when you open it up and flip it like this, aim it forward, now you're basically in selfie mode. So you can see here, you can easily see yourself in the camera like I am right now in front of another camera filming. You could see up there, and you can then turn the screen as needed. So this is what it would look like if you were holding it if you were standing in front of the camera filming yourself. And like I said, I use that awesome wireless remote shooting grip, which helped dramatically when it came to filming. All right, so looking at the back of the camera, you got some buttons here. You have the menu button, you have the function button, and you also have this control wheel, which spins like so, and it also acts as buttons when you push down on the 4 corners like north, south, east, west. Those are actually buttons as well. Then you have the C2 custom button, which is the garbage can, but this by default is custom programmed to the product showcase feature, which is a really nice feature. Then you have the playback button. If you press over here, that will trigger the drive modes, and up top, if you press by default, that is the display mode. So that is the way that the screen will display the information, like on the sides and stuff like that. I'll show you that in more detail when I turn the camera on. Now looking at the bottom of the camera, you have the tripod mount, which is a 1/4" thread. And then over here, you have the battery compartment. So what you got to do is you just got to slide that over, and inside there is where the battery goes. And there's a little blue tab there that'll pop out the battery, like so. And the memory card goes in right next to it, and it goes with the label facing away from the battery, and it just locks in there like that. And then the battery goes in with the arrow pointing that way, like so. And then you slide this down, and then you have to slide the little lock lever over. And that's how that works. Now, looking at it from the side over here, you have a bunch of different ports. Specifically, you have the micro HDMI port right there, and that is for hooking up to an external monitor, your TV, for example, or an Atmos, Ninja recorder, for example, if you want the clean HDMI out and you're looking for that feature. Now, the second one here is the multi-USB port. Now, that is where you would charge the camera. It comes with a USB cable. You just plug that USB cable in there and plug the other side into any charger that basically takes USB, whether it's a computer or one of those outlet style units, and you can charge the camera up that way. And then on top, you have the microphone. So there's the microphone port. If you're using a high quality microphone mounted to the hot shoe or whatever, you can plug that into there and get better audio quality. So this feels pretty good in the hands. I gotta say, like, it's easy to hold with the grip on the front. Your fingers wrap around. It has this nice little thumb rest here. So it's fairly easy to hold. When you're aiming it towards yourself, like so, you can hold it like this and record vlogging, which would make sense when the screen is out over here. And it works pretty good. But like I was saying, I actually used the GP-VP T2B2 shooting grip, which again is kind of pricey. I recently reviewed it. It does go for like $140, something like that. And it's definitely not cheap, but it is really high quality built. And for this purpose, for vlogging and stuff, it really is an excellent option. Now, there's other options out there that are more affordable, but Sony did a really good job in the build quality department, in my opinion, on this unit. It works flawlessly once you have it hooked up with the Bluetooth, so you're not going to have any of those weird glitchy issues that you might have with an aftermarket device, in my opinion anyway, based on my experience. So, alrighty, so I just turned the camera on here, and what I wanted to show you is just very basics on how this camera works. I have a whole beginner's guide how-to video that's over an hour long that goes into much greater detail than I'm going to go into right now. But I do want to show you the very basics, of course. So if you want to take a photo, you just hit this button, it'll focus, and then it'll take the photo. And same thing with video, you just hit the record button and it'll start recording video. And remember I told you this display button here? When you hit that, notice how the screen display changes. You got a histogram view, you got the auto leveler view, and then you have this option which will show you the aperture and shutter speed, which is really nice. And then this option, which will basically just give you all the information. Now, another cool thing about the Sony cameras is you have the function menu. When you hit the function button, that little FN button right there, that'll bring you into this menu over here, and that gives you quick access to basically all the key features that you need depending on what mode you're in. So the function menu changes if you're in video mode or panorama mode, for example. Depending on what mode you're in, this will appear different. And you can customize this as well inside the menu system to your liking. Let me go into the menu system quick here and show you a couple of key features. So the very basics of how this menu system works is there's tabs on the top, right? Those are the main tabs. And then within those tabs, there are pages. As you can see right here, you got 1 through 9. So there's tabs and then there's pages. So if you go to the top and you scroll over, this one starts as tab 1, it's quality and so forth. And in here is where you will want to set your image quality specs. When you first turn the camera on, as you will see in my beginner's guide, basically it's set to JPEG format when you take it out of the box, but I switch the file quality to RAW because I prefer to process my files in Lightroom. So when you're scrolling through the menu, there's just a variety of features. Now, interval shooting, that is time-lapse, which is an awesome feature. I highly recommend checking that out. And I actually have a video on that as well that'll show you how to use that in more detail. But just so you know, that's right there in the menu. And you can basically change all sorts of stuff like drive mode. And remember, I told you the left button here is also drive mode. But if you go in there, you can change your drive mode. And this is where you would set the camera to continuous shooting. So it'll just rapid fire shoot like so. And you can actually hit the function menu and you can go into drive mode as well right here. So there's multiple ways to get into drive mode. Hit this button here, you can go into the function menu, or of course you could access it from the menu system itself. Now this is where you would set self timer as well. So you got a 2-second self timer there. So that will, when you press the shutter button, it'll count down and then take the shot. You also have continuous self timer. So it'll take 3 images at various intervals, and notice there's a left and a right arrow next to that, so you can change the amount of shots and the amount of time it takes to set the self timer. Then you have bracketing. Bracketing is great for HDR photography, and if you're interested in that, I have a whole video dedicated on that as well. So let me just go back into the menu system here. And I want to show you more stuff in the menu. Now, face priority in multimetering, that is a newer feature. And basically what that'll do is it'll try to keep your face exposed correctly. Even if the scene behind you is changing from dark to bright, it'll try to prioritize your face auto exposure wise. So you can turn that on and off here. I thought it worked pretty good overall, but you might not want the background to get super, super bright, which will happen in some cases, just so you know. So that's where you would turn that feature on and off. And the ND filter is right there. I have that set to auto. Now you got creative styles here. This is where you can change the way that the camera processes the photos, and it works for both JPEG and RAW quality. Picture effects only works in JPEG mode, and those are the more fun effects like illustration mode, toy camera, things like that. Picture profile, this is where your advanced video features would be, such as S-Log2, S-Log3, HLG, and so forth. That's under picture profile. Soft skin effect, this is a really cool feature, and it does not work in RAW quality, but it does work in video. So that's where that feature is, and you can turn it off if you don't want your skin to be smoothed. But I would recommend leaving it on for video. It works really well, I thought. Now, product showcase, that's another feature that will basically turn off facial recognition technology. So if you hold something up in front of the camera and your face is also in the scene, it won't prioritize your face. That's what Product Showcase does. It just turns off the facial recognition technology and facial priority. So normally if you hold something up in front of the camera and your face is in the scene, it'll maintain focus on your face because facial priority is usually what you want. But this will turn that off. So if you're holding something up in front of the camera, it will then focus on that subject that's closest to the camera. So that's how that works. And I also go over this in my how-to guide in much more detail. Now, file format, this is where you'll change your video settings. I have it set to 4K, but you can change that to HD as well. And that will give you the ability to change your recording settings to 120p for slow motion video and things like that. High frame rate settings, that's the super slow motion that I was telling you about, that you can shoot at 240 frames per second, 480 frames per second, or 960 frames per second. And then you have your dual record option here, which some people might want to use. Now you have a bunch of other features in here, such as drive speed and so forth. Let me just go back. I have to change the file format here to 4K. Some of these features don't work in 120p when recording at 120. So proxy recording is in here. AF drive speed. Now this isn't a feature you're going to want to change. By default, it is set to fast. I would recommend setting this to normal. And AF track sensitivity, by default, it's set to responsive. You should change that to standard, in my opinion. Make sure you change those features because your video will look a lot less jumpy and it'll look much better when transitioning from one subject to another. So if I just go to mode here, notice when you hit the mode dial, how this mode wheel comes up. I wanted to show you this as well. Here's all the different modes, and you got scene, panorama, manual, shutter, aperture, program, intelligent auto. Then you have intelligent auto for video, and just regular movie mode here. I'm just going to select movie mode for now. And then within movie mode, you could then select what exposure mode you want, whether it's programmable auto, aperture, shutter, or manual. Very, very powerful, guys. So scrolling down here, you have steady shot. By default, it's set to active, which is the best quality. It'll give you the most stabilization, but it also does crop in a little bit when you're in active mode. It crops in less when you're in standard, and it doesn't crop in much at all when it's turned off. So if you're on a tripod, you could set this feature to off, for example. But if you're walking with the camera in front of you, you're definitely going to want it to active for the best stabilization, especially if you're not using a gimbal and you're using a shooting grip like this one. Record lamp. Now this is that tally light on the front. You can turn that off if you want here, so that light doesn't light up when you're recording. Zoom speed here. Now zoom speed, you're going to want to have it set to normal in my opinion when recording video, and it'll go nice and slow, but you can set it to fast here if you want it to zoom faster while recording video. I wanted to make sure you knew about that feature. You also have grid line here. I have mine set to rule of thirds, which basically just gives you a grid on the screen, as you can see there. See that grid? And it just helps line up stuff, make sure you have the horizon level and stuff like that. Now, custom keys, this is where you can program your custom keys. You can program for photo, video, and playback. And then function menu set. Remember how I told you you can control what's inside the function menu? This is where you can do that. So you can change that and custom program it to your liking. Now, another thing I wanted to show you is the garbage can here. You can hit the garbage can at any time, and it'll give you some more information about whatever particular feature you're on. So just remember, if you don't know, you can hit the little garbage can there. Function of touch operation, by default, it is set to touch tracking. So you can basically just touch the screen, and it'll automatically start tracking. So see that? Now it's just going to track that location. And that works really well. But you can turn that off and cancel it by pressing the center button here, and that'll cancel touch tracking. Now, if I go into the menu system and you select function of touch operation, you can also change it to touch shutter or touch focus, which you may prefer if you don't want it to track. Audio signals, this is where you would turn off your audio signals so you don't have to hear that beeping. Now, this is where you would send to smartphone if you're using the Imaging Edge software. Control with smartphone, this was also where you would set that up so you can use your phone to control the camera. It has limited controls, but it is a nice feature. Now, Bluetooth settings, this is where you're going to need to go to set up this shooting grip. So if you're interested in doing that, check out that video and it'll walk you through it. Location info, this is where you can add the GPS information from the phone and embed it in the photos. That's just a feature there you can use. Monitor brightness, here's another one. Brightness setup, for this only has the LCD screen. There's no LED viewfinder, so if you're in really bright conditions, you're going to want to change this to sunny weather mode. Switch it to that and the screen will become much brighter and it'll be much easier to see in bright conditions. Now here's another feature that you're going to need to change. Auto power off temperature, you're going to want to set this to high. It's by default set to standard. You're going to want to change that to high, and that'll allow you to record indefinitely, basically, until the battery dies or the camera overheats. And that's where that feature is. Make sure you turn that to high. Touch operation, you can turn that off here if you don't want to use the touch screen. And USB power supply, you want to have that on. That will allow you to have a USB power supply hooked up to the USB port, which will give you much, much more battery life. This is where you can change your language if you need to, and set up your date and time, format the memory card, and so forth. Version down here, this will give you your current firmware version. Right now, at the time of this review, it's at version 1.0, and there's no update yet, but there will be in the future, I'm sure. Setting reset, this is where you can set the camera back to factory default if you want to. And then here is the My Menu area, and you can program the My Menu area with basically any settings you want. So the key features that you use most, you can just program into My Menu, and that'll just help speed up settings that you want to change that are a little bit harder to find when they're deep inside the menu system. So, all right, guys, now we're going to go over some lab testing photos because I want to show you the high ISO capabilities and also how the lens performs and the camera performs at the minimum focus distance and the entire zoom range. All right, so here we are in Lightroom, and this is just a couple quick lab testing shots. So as you can see here, this is wide open at 9.4 millimeter, which is the effective 24 millimeter, and it's at f1.8. And I just wanted to zoom in here to show you just how sharp and clear this looks. And you can see it looks really good. And this is an example of the background separation you can get with the 1-inch sensor. I was about 4 feet away from the lab scene here. Now, zoomed in to an effective 70 millimeter, this is what you're looking at, and that stopped down to f2.8 now. You could notice up here on the left is where the EXIF data is. So here's 24 again, and here's 70 from the same exact spot. So that's the kind of zoom range you can expect. Now I just wanted to go through here and do an ISO run so you can see the noise. So this is ISO 200. Now let me just zoom in here. This is ISO 400. This is ISO 800. You can see it's pretty well controlled still. Now 1600, it's starting to creep in, and I was shooting in RAW quality just to let you know. I will show you an example in JPEG quality though. And ISO 3200 is really where you start to see pretty significant noise come in, but you could still pick out the dollar, not bad. The shadow areas, you could see it a little bit, it's getting a little bit of grain to it. Now 6400 is where there's definitely a color shift. Let me zoom out. And you see 6400 where that green starts to come in. You can just see that green cast. So 3200 is really as high as you're going to want to go if you want to maintain accurate colors and stuff like that. As soon as you get into the 6400 range, the shadow areas really start to turn green, and you can see the noise comes in pretty heavy. And then we got 12,800, again, pretty significant noise. You can see that there, and the picture really is starting to get a little bit of muddy, but still not too bad as far as detail retention on the dollar bill and stuff like that. Now here's an example of what 12,800 looks like in JPEG mode. So let me zoom in here and you can see how the noise reduction works. You can see it kind of looks a little bit muddy, but it did clean up a lot of the noise. And here is the RAW, just to compare. So you can see the grain there in the RAW. And then the JPEG, you can see how it just smooths out that noise. And here's 6400 in JPEG mode. So here's 12,800. And here's 6400 in JPEG. So you can see the 6400 looks pretty darn good in JPEG mode, in my opinion. Now I just wanted to do a minimum focus distance test here. So this is at f1.8, and I was pretty much as close as I could get to the quarter. And you could see the quarter is only a couple inches away from the wood and dollar bill here, and you can see how out of focus it is. The circular bokeh balls look okay. Nothing crazy, but they look pretty good. And let me just scroll through the aperture here. So this is f1.8. This is f2.8. This is f4. This is f5.6. This is f8. And this is f11. So you can see the sharpness on the quarter is fantastic all the way through the range. And the bokeh ball renderings look pretty good as well. And you can just see how the background defocus gets more and more as you stop it open to f1.8. All right, so now let's check out some real world photos and some more real world sample video. All right, so in the real world, like I said, I went hiking with the kids and I got some pretty good shots. I was using JPEG mode and RAW quality mode. So this was shot in JPEG mode. Put the camera on the little tripod there. Then I actually dialed the aperture to f11 here to get a slower shutter. So the shutter was 1.3 seconds on this one, and I was just trying to get more water blur. So this one here was 1/30th of a second. You could see the water. And then this one here was 1.3 seconds. Now this is just a picture of an acorn. And here's just Layla holding a leaf. Cool leaf, Layla.
Thank you.
And here's another example, similar to the lab test at a minimum focus distance. You could see what kind of nice separation you can get, and the, nice bokeh balls in the background looks really good. Then we got to the waterfall, and I just took a picture of Jace in JPEG mode, and you can see that skin smoothing does a pretty good job. His skin is really smooth, and the camera just does that automatically. Zoom in here. Nice. And here's just a picture of the waterfall. I stopped her down to f11 to get a slower shutter speed. And here's just one of the kids in front of the waterfall, and you can see it looks pretty darn good. Here's another one. This is an actual auto HDR. And we also went to the rail trail, and I had the bikes loaded on the back of the car. and it just looks crazy. Bikes are, it looks like way too much on the back of the car. The front wheel is actually a lot higher off the ground than it looks. But anyway, I figured out how to do it a better way now. But check this out. This is at 24mm, and I was pretty close to the subject. And just look at the background, and you can see all the stuff going on there. Then what I did was I walked backwards and zoomed in to 70mm and took pretty much the same exact shot. But you can see how this shot, because I was at 70mm effective, the background is a lot less busy and it's much easier to focus on the subject. So when in doubt, just walk back and zoom in to isolate your subject better. Trail, we have this nice pretty scene here. Here's another one. Pretty happy with how that came out. And here's just another one looking down. Here's one of the panoramics. I put it in sweep panorama mode. Got to be in JPEG quality for this. It came out really good, I thought. Here's one of Jace checking out the scene. And along the rail trail, they have these cool signs now that show you some history and, you know, explain what went on. There was a train wreck here. It was an unfortunate accident, but we read all these signs and it was very interesting. Now this one I was just playing around in the lab and I put it on illustration mode. This is one of those picture effects. And then I was hanging out with my brother. We went to this newer brewery we never went to in Warwick area. And I just wanted to show a quick zoom test here. So again, this is 24mm. Now this is 70mm, and then I had clear image zoom on. So this is what you can get when using clear image zoom, and you can see the quality is still really good when using clear image zoom. And here's just one of some bikes parked. Now inside this brewery, you can see it's really nice, wide angle view here. And here's a zoomed in view. And here's just one of the beers on the counter there. You can see the background out of focus looks pretty good. Color and clarity is excellent. This is in JPEG mode. Here's just another one. Now here's just an image looking up a hill here. I just wanted to show you again in JPEG mode the clarity, color, contrast, what you can expect to get with this camera. It does a really good job for a 1-inch sensor in my opinion. And here's just one of the sunset I thought came out really good. What a beautiful view. Now this one, I just wanted to show you quickly, if I go into development mode, this is what it looked like straight off the camera here. Now what I wanted to show you was how you can manipulate this. So I can pull back the highlights a little bit, see like that, and I can bring the shadows out. So you can drag the shadows out, but that's obviously going to introduce some noise. But you can bring them out a little bit just to get a little information. Then I can crop this down just a touch, something like that, to make it a little more symmetrical. Then I can jack up the vibrance a bit, a little bit of clarity, and I could add a little bit of warmth right about there. And now here's just a before and after, so you can see real quickly what kind of quality you can get in low light situations. Now again, that was at ISO 1250 here, so that's pretty high ISO. And if you zoom in, you can see some of the noise in the shadow areas where I brought the, you know, shadow detail out. Now here's one more at the basher cone. Now just look at how awesome this looks. I played with this a little bit. This was a raw quality image, but you could see just, it looks fantastic. So in good light, 1-inch sensor, you can really get some excellent quality off this camera. And here's just one more photo there. All right, guys, so that is about it for the Sony ZV-1 review. I really hope you got what you were looking for. I really tried to put the camera through its paces in the real world, in vlogging environments and low light environments and things like that, just so you could really appreciate what the camera can do for you. It might not be what you're looking for. You might want something with a larger sensor like I'm using here, the Sony a6400, with a fast 30mm f1.4 Sigma lens on it. A setup like that is gonna yield you more background separation, as you can see behind me. The 1-inch sensor, it just isn't big enough to get that unbelievable background separation, and the lens also isn't really fast enough either in that regard. But for what it is, it's really good, and the quality at the end of the day is excellent in my opinion. And if you're somebody vlogging, you know, trying to tell your stories, it's a really good option for that purpose in my opinion, and better than the RX100 Mark VII, because you want the faster lens and the lighter weight, in my opinion, and the better built-in microphone. Now, of course, you can use a higher quality microphone in the hot shoe and use the mic input, but if you don't want to do that, you just want a turnkey, like run and gun solution, this is really one of the best options out there today, especially for new users to photo and video, because the learning curve is fairly low on the ZV-1 compared to some of the other Sony cameras where you really have to dig into the menu and really know what certain settings are and what they mean and how to manipulate them to get what you're looking for. The ZV-1 really makes it like turnkey with that background defocus and product highlight feature in particular, product showcase rather. That's pretty much it for this review. I will catch up with you guys next time. Please do me a favor and hit that subscribe button and give me a thumbs up if you thought this video was useful. Also, don't hesitate to hit that notification bell if you want to get emails when I come out with a new video. Also, below the video, guys, in the description area will be all the links to the recommended accessories for the Sony ZV-1, so be sure to check that out. And also, please be sure to leave comments or ask questions below the video if you have them. All right, I'll catch up with you next time. Have a great day. Take care.